The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
Oh shit! It's Vince Russo!
Vince McMahon's best-kept secret.
I am the Antichrist of professional wrestling.
David Arquette won the world title!
I've got a wife, 3 kids at home, and I really don't need this shit.
How can this show be so awful, Mr. McMahon? I didn't think it was.
Viagra on a pole match!
And Hogan, you big bald son of a bitch, kiss my ass!
Judy Bagwell on a forklift match! McMahon, the family, the Rock, they screwed us all!
Now you're the editor, right?
Mankind did it! Jumpy, beat me! Goldberg steered Russo out of the cage!
I'm from New York.
I'll get downright nasty.
This is Vince Russo's The Brand.
Hello, everybody. This is Vince Russo, and this is The Brand. If you're watching on the Realm Network, it is the last day in November. If you're watching on Podcast One, it is the first day in December. And I was telling my wife just yesterday, I cannot believe we're into December. I mean, I've had to deal with so much the last couple of months. Honestly, I'm not even keeping track of the day, let alone the month or the date. But we are into December 1st. If you're listening on Podcast One, I made a commitment with this show and to myself that I really wanted to start talking about things that matter in life, things that are important, things that you, the listener, might be experiencing yourself. I just think that there are so many bigger issues in life that we need to be talking about. There's so many things that I want to say. And let me say this again for the 1,000th time, okay? When I give an opinion out, it is the opinion of Vince Russo. It is the way I was born. It is the way I was raised by my parents. It's my life experiences. It is my opinion. I don't expect anybody to agree with it or disagree with it. It's basically the opinion of one man. And that's what this show is going to revolve around. I had an incident at the Atlanta airport that I came on this show and I spoke about. And I specifically spoke about a group of individuals that I had this experience with. A group of individuals. A selected group. 5 or 6 individuals. And I basically said at that point in time, as a white male, and the 5 or 6 people involved in this incident all happen to be African Americans, I said at that point in time, I felt that I was racially profiled by this group of people. I also said, I know for a fact white people racially profile black people all the time because I freaking lived in Atlanta. I lived it, bro. I lived it for 9 years when I had a business that was half black and half white. So I've been around the block a couple of times. But I basically, my message was, it's happening on both sides of the coin. So, you know, when you're a black person and you're saying you're being racially profiled, bro, just understand a lot of times it works on the other shoe. And I felt at that point in time, I was being racially profiled because I was white at TSA at the Atlanta airport, and not only TSA security, the police, by that group of people. Well, you know, of course, you know, with the dependable dirt sheets we have in wrestling, that turned into Vince Russo is a racist and he's discriminating against an entire race. That's what that turned into when I made it clear it was one incident. There was 5 or 6 people involved. So I've been dealing with this. Meanwhile, keep in mind, the interview was out for a month. About 40,000 people on Podcast One heard the interview. Not one single person said a negative thing to me about it. Black, white, or indifferent. Not one person. The second, this wrestling journalist, and God, do I use that term loosely, jumped all over this story. Well, all of a sudden, I'm a racist and I'm discriminating against an entire race. Not only that, this guy went as far back to find out things people said about Vince Russo in 1999. People I didn't even talk to. This guy actually went back and got a comment from somebody where I was having a conversation with Terry Taylor, and I made the statement to Terry Taylor, yeah, Terry, the black wrestlers are not as good or gifted as the white wrestlers. Does anybody understand how freaking asinine that statement is? Does anybody understand that? For me to say, because your skin is black, you're not as good as a white wrestler, that's why I'm taking offense to this. And that's why I'm pissed off by this, because it's absolute bullshit. I worked with black people in my life, Mexican people. My best friend in the world who passed away was a Puerto Rican. I don't care who you are, bro. And that's why I'm freaking pissed off about it. I love the black athletes that I work with, the Booker T's and the Stevie Rays and the Devons and the Mark Hendrys and the Elix Skippers, and I can go on and on and on. Right now there are 3 black athletes in Rocky Mountain Pro. I want to get those guys over just as over as I want to get the white guys. So to label me something like that freaking pisses me off, and that's why I'm going on about it, because it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. But I wasn't the only one to feel that way. And I've got to be honest with you. I got a lot of beautiful text messages, emails, direct messages from quite a few of the black people who said, Vince, we heard the podcast. We didn't have a problem with what you said. We weren't offended as a race. You were clearly talking about an incident. We want you to know we didn't have a problem with that. There was one female African-American woman who was so upset by the comments made by the dirt sheet writer that she contacted him. And she had a conversation with him because she felt, she felt passionate about this topic, as I do. And she is with us here today. And we are going to have a conversation. And I hope out of this conversation, together, united, her and I can show you it is much easier to love each other than to spew hate. And not only spew hate, but to be freaking labeling people racist when you're not even of that race. Guys, this is more important than freaking what happened on Monday Night Raw. I promise you. And I hope you listen to this, and I hope you open up your ears and you open up your hearts and you hear this discussion. I'm going to bring on my guest, and I got to tell you something. We have very little in common, but we have one big thing in common. Now, this woman, my friend Francesca, and I already apologized to her because, bro, that has to be the hardest name for me to pronounce, is Francesca. My friend Francesca is an Afro-American woman. You understand that? So now we could talk about the racism. We could talk about the sexism. She is bisexual. So none of those things do we have in common. I am not a black woman who's bisexual. I mean, I think you can see that. The one thing we do have in common, Francesca is from San Francisco. She's a college counselor with a master's degree. But here's the big thing. San Francisco Giants fan. So we got that in common. I'm going to bring her on right now. Francesca, are you there?
I am here. Good morning. How are you?
All right, Francesca, how am I doing with the name so far? Am I getting better with it? Francesca, is that better?
Not really.
Give me the correct way of saying your name.
It's Francesca.
Francesca. Oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
gonna butcher that. Okay, Francesca, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I got you right with your background. You are a college counselor with a master's degree at a university out there in San Francisco.
Correct.
Now, Francesca, how serious a Giants fan are you? I have to know that off the bat. Are you a Giants fan because you're living in Frisco? Are you a Giants fan because they're just coming off a 3 World Series? Or are you a live and die Giants fan like Vince Russo?
I wouldn't say I'm a live and die Giants fan. I would say that with the momentum of the last 3 World Series that they had, I kind of became a fan through that, and I've maintained my fan loyalty through them winning their World Series. So I was really bummed when they lost in the playoffs.
Do you get out to the ballpark a lot?
A couple times a year.
Yeah, you are so lucky. I always tell my wife when I'm retired, I just want to live in San Francisco and I want to be a season ticket holder and I want to go to every Giant game. That's all I want to do. My favorite city in the world. Now, Francesca, are you born and raised in San Francisco or did you find your way there somehow?
Actually, I was born here in the city, but I moved to Pennsylvania when I was a young child. So I had lived in Pennsylvania basically from the time I was recently born until I was 18, and then I moved back to California when I was 18. And then I went to community college in a town outside of San Francisco called Vallejo, and then moved to San Francisco. I've been here about a little over 8 years now.
Okay, now, Francesca, you and I have crossed paths once before because I had a show once where I talked about my fascination for boobies, and I didn't understand where that came from. And you said, as a counselor, you might be able to help me. And I talked about, you know what, maybe down the road we'll talk about that. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. But now, again, recently we crossed paths again when you made it known to me. Vince, I just want you to know, I listen to both your podcasts. I listened to your podcast again about the airport. I listened to your podcast about the role of men and women. And, not only did you, I don't want to say agree with what I said, because we're going to talk about that in a minute, but not only did you not have an issue with it, you were compelled enough to contact the dirt sheet writer, and you can mention him by name. I don't want to put the guy over personally. If you want to, Francesca, that's cool. But you reached out to him and you had a Twitter exchange that you sent to me, and I saw, and there was one thing in that Twitter exchange that was very telling. And I'm going to bring that up in a minute. But Francesca, you really, I know I really got to be passionate about something when I'm contacting somebody, when I'm saying, wait a minute, bro, I think you were out of line. I think what you said was unfair. I disagree with that. I got to be really passionate about something when I do that. So kind of walk me through, listen, let's establish you were a fan of the brand before. So, you listened to all the podcasts, you heard those podcasts, you had some issues, you made the decision to contact the writer. Walk me through that process.
Sure. So I think a lot of it kind of stemmed from just some of the hate comments that were made about you, and really labeling you as a racist and a sexist. Now, what I will say is, I don't necessarily agree with all the comments, but when you throw out labels like that, you really, really should know what those labels mean and put it into a context. So when I contacted the writer or the journalist, I wanted to know from him, what exactly did you say that you deemed as a racist comment? And he then referred to, well, did you listen to the interview? And I said, yes, I did. And I'm aware of so I'm not feeding into that. So the fact that you're having a conversation with someone who's purposely trying to bring you down, that's not fair. So I feel like some of that, some of his maybe feelings around that are also related to maybe him talking with the and that being perpetuated by possibly.
Okay, so did he give you an answer to that question? You said to him exactly, what did you find racist? And he said to you, did you listen to the podcast? And you said yes. I was trying to get the same thing out of him. I kept asking in that DM. I made it clear, bro. What did I say? Where now you have basically say that I've targeted an entire race, and he kept coming back with, oh, it was racist sounding. It was No, bro. Specifically, what did I say? I never got an answer to that. Did you ever get an answer to that?
No, I didn't. And that's what really compelled me to challenge him more on this issue, because I then proceeded to ask him, well, if you don't know, I take that back. If you can't pinpoint exactly what was said, have you asked other Blacks, African Americans, is that comment racist? And he took it very out of context, because then he proceeded to tell me, well, since I'm not Black, I can't speak about these issues. And that's not what I said. I just said that you have to, with your experience, everybody's experience is their own. And what I felt as though he and other people were doing were invalidating your experience that what happened at the Atlanta airport, because he wasn't there. The haters weren't there. You were there. You experienced firsthand what you thought was some racial profiling, and you spoke on it. Does that make you a racist? No, of course not. But I think it's how they took it out of context that really bothered me. And I proceeded to ask him, like, well, what is it that was said that you felt was racist? Since he didn't give me an answer, he then again tried to justify, well, I can't talk about race issues. Yes, you can. But unless you're in our shoes, unless you have lived as a Black person, you're never going to fully understand how we feel about certain issues. And that was the point I was trying to make to him.
God, Francesca, I gotta tell you, like this, and I talked about this yesterday. Do you know who Kenny King is?
I don't.
Okay, Kenny King is a wrestler that was in TNA. Again, the racist Vince Russo. I had never met Kenny King. I never had a conversation with him. I thought he was very, very entertaining on TNA. So I wanted to bring Kenny King on the show. That's the racist Vince Russo, right? So I brought Kenny King on the show, and we started getting into a very deep conversation. Very, very smart individual. And Kenny King turned around to me and he said, Vince, he goes, listen, man, I just got to tell you something. He said, as a Black man, he says, I have to ask you this question. He goes, how can you write for a Black wrestler? He said, Vince, you're not Black. You don't know what we're thinking. You don't know what we're feeling. You don't know what we're made of. How can you, as a white male, possibly write for a Black man? And I got to tell you, Francesca, boom, it hit me right between the eyes. And I said, Kenny, I can't. You are 100% right. And let's put women in the same category. How does Vince Russo write for a woman? I'm not a woman. I don't know what a woman's thinking, what a woman is feeling. I'm writing based on, what I think a woman is thinking or feeling, what I feel an African. I've never been in those shoes. So when Kenny said that, it hit me right between the freaking eyes. And I said, bro, you're absolutely right. And then I said, why aren't there, Black people on creative teams? Why aren't there women on creative teams? It's absolutely ridiculous, bro. You're dead on. And I never forgot Kenny King's words. And from that point on, I really looked at things differently. And I got to tell you something, Francesca. That's why when I'm around African Americans, a lot of times I will go out of my way to have a conversation with an African American before I will a white person, because I want to try to understand the things I don't understand. And that's why I try to engage in communication. Like, Kenny King, that was such an eye-opener for me. But with that being said, here's one of the issues I had with the comments from the journalist. How can you, when I'm talking about the black race, and I wasn't talking about race, I was talking about individuals clearly, as a white guy, how the hell can you cry racism? How does a white guy know what's racist and what isn't racist to an African American? How could I possibly know that as a white guy, to the point of I'm gonna label another white guy a racist? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah, and that was part of what I had questioned him on as well. And I had posed like, well, how do you know how we as blacks feel about that comment? Did you ask other blacks? And someone else made a comment saying that it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is to understand that comments could be prejudicial. I agree with that 100%. But if you have not lived your life as a black person, you're never ever going to fully understand what we've been through, our experiences, our triumphs, our setbacks, because there's just that disconnection that, as much as we want to try to understand and be empathetic, there's always going to be that disconnect, because you'll never fully understand 100% what someone has gone through. And that's also a good thing in just validating someone's experience. Your experience of something that happened to you can be different than that same experience that happened to another person. Everybody's experience is their own. And I think the important thing is to validate everybody's experience as their own, and having people be entitled to their opinion. But after I made that comment about how did you ask other blacks how he felt, that kind of stirred up things for me after comments he made after that.
Well, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So after I had made the comment, and I don't want to misquote him, so I'm going to pull up the tweet. But essentially, he made a comment.
Well, you know what? While you're pulling that up, Francesca, let me say something. So I'll give you time to pull that up, so you don't have to feel. Francesca, you know what I hate? You know what I hate? And I want to see, if I'm white and you're black, I want to see if we can relate to this. I swear, like, Francesca, like, somebody says that now Vince Russo is going on his, oh no, I got a lot of black friends campaign. Actually, I don't have any black friends, because quite frankly, there aren't a lot of black people in Colorado, but I worked with a lot of black people and became very, very close with a lot of black people. And I really do love black people. But Francesca, you know what sucks, man? People like this and people that make comments like this, I think they make it worse, because what they do is, as a white person, they almost make me afraid to approach a black person with the fear of saying something wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, let me give you a perfect example. You know Devon Dudley, right?
Yes.
I've known Devon for 20 freaking years. I love the guy. I love his kids, right? When I see Devon, okay, like, my knee-jerk reaction, when I see Devon, I want to say to Devon, my beautiful black brother. That's what I want to say to Devon. Do you know, I was so afraid to say that to him because, oh, you're a racist. This is a racist. Everything we say is racist. That I literally had to ask Devon. I said, Devon, is it all right if when I greet you, I say, Devon, my beautiful black brother? Because like that's what I want to feel. That's how happy I am to see you. Is it okay for me to say that? And Devon said, yeah, Vince, of course, bro. It's absolutely okay for you to say that. But my point is with right away, people being so quick to the draw. Oh, you're a racist. Oh, you had an incident in Atlanta. Now you're targeting an entire group. When people are so quick to say that, I think it makes the relations more difficult because you're always on the defense of, oh my God, am I going to say one thing wrong where I'm... Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that happen on the black side as well?
Oh yeah, all the time. And I think and I'm not saying, you can't go back and change what happened, but I think how I would have handled it is have an open conversation with Black people about that comment, and then using what their thoughts are. If he really felt compelled to call you a racist or say your comments were racist, then do you have examples of other African Americans who found that comment racist? If that's the case, then I'm more than happy to have a conversation about that, because then there might be a lack of understanding and awareness there that we need to bridge. So part of that, I do agree that you really should understand and take and kind of I'm trying to think of what to say, but understand and move forward in trying to see how that person's experience has shaped them. Because like I said, everybody's experience is their own.
And we're going to get to that in a minute, because there's something I want to talk about that I think is very, very important and was very telling in one of the comments that he made to you. But if you have the comments up now, do you want to elaborate how that conversation started going a little?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So just to look at the comments, I had actually acknowledged him, saying, I appreciate. So I wasn't necessarily bashing him for saying that, I had no problem. What are you saying? And I acknowledged that, like, I appreciate you standing up for us. Like, that's important. But what I had went into was, well, if you're not Black, you're never going to fully understand the race issues or the issues that come with us. And then he said, are you telling me I shouldn't speak about how I feel on this subject because I'm not Black? No, I never said that. I never said that you can't talk about these issues. I never said that you can't support these issues. But then I had asked him, how did he deem what you specifically said as racist? Did he ask other Black African Americans what you said as racist? And then someone else had made a comment, it doesn't take a certain skin color to know when things are prejudicial. But then I replied, no, it does not. But how does he know how we as Blacks feel with our experience? And his comment, which really, really infuriated me, was, and this is public, so anybody can see this, but because I'm Mexican and Jewish and have been discriminated against many times throughout my life.
That's it. That's it right there, Francesca. As soon as I saw that comment, that's it. And I got it and I understood it. But on the other side of the coin, Francesca, who hasn't been discriminated against their entire life? Let's be honest. You are a woman, you are Black, you are bisexual. Like I won't even begin to try to step in your shoes of what you've gone through your life. Me, the fact that I was an Italian from New York, to this day, I'm discriminated against. And I've spoken out on that many, many times to this day. But that is the problem. The fact that he's been discriminated against his whole life of being, Jewish and Mexican. And, I understand that because, like I said, I've been discriminated against for, similar things. But the last thing that I would be looking to do is labeling somebody a racist or a sexist or a this or that, just because I was discriminated as a human being. And I thought that line was very telling, but we've all been, people been discriminated. You're fat, you're skinny, you're too smart, you're too stupid, the way you dress. Every single walk of life gets discriminated against at one point in their life.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But then there's a difference between relating to how someone's experience was and knowing how they feel. And in addition to his comment referencing his ethnicity and knowing how he felt, he also said that he had an adopted an adopted Black brother, a gay sister. He has Muslim friends. So I know how you feel all too well. That, again, infuriated me because at this point he's making what's called a micro insult. And I can go into what those are.
Go ahead. I'm interested in this.
Sure. So this is kind of all related to what's called a microaggression, and a microaggression basically is saying it's a brief everyday exchange that sends denigrating messages to certain individuals because of their group membership. So there's 3 types of microaggressions. They appear in different contexts. The first one's a micro assault. That one is defined as an explicit racial derogation, verbal, nonverbal, example, name calling, avoidant behavior, purposeful discriminatory action. So that's called a micro assault. This is a micro insult. So this is what I felt Ryan committed to an extent. Communications that convey rudeness and insensitivity and demean a person's racial heritage or identity, subtle snubs unknown to the perpetrator, hidden insulting messages to the recipient of color. So what he's saying, knowing how I feel, I felt like that kind of demeaned how I identify as an African American and invalidated my experience. So this then goes into the third and the last definition, and that's called micro-invalidation. And I think this is what happened among all parties involved. And what that is communications that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thoughts, feelings, or experiential reality of a person belonging to a particular group.
Break that down to me, though, in your own words, Francesca, for people listening. Like, listen, you got a master's. So it's not, you're talking circles around me. Okay?
Sure.
You're a very intelligent woman, but break that down for us. What exactly does that mean? What exactly happened in a nutshell, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it just basically came off as that you think you understand the issues, the racial issues that Blacks go through because you have had similar experiences of your own. Now, I'm not saying that your experiences aren't valid, but if you haven't lived your life as an African American, how are you going to truly understand the inequalities, the injustices that African Americans have felt for the last few centuries or hundreds of years? So I think with that, that's just, and I don't think he meant any harm in that comment. I think it was just more a lack of understanding what you just said and how that affects another person.
Yeah. Okay. Then we let's turn for a minute to the sexist comments. Okay. Now listen, you and I have never had a conversation before. I don't know where you stand, on God. Where do you stand on God?
I identify as agnostic.
Okay. Well, I'm a Christian guy. And people get Christian refused with a religion. Christianity is not a religion. I was a Catholic. Once I became a Christian, I found things in the Bible that I felt the Catholic religion was going against. So I became a Christian, which means I believe in the Word of God, I believe in the Bible, and that's how I live my life. And I don't, if people don't believe in God, if people are atheists, whatever the case may be, that's fine. It's clear in the Bible, God gives us all free will. So I'm just talking about my beliefs. If people don't believe in God, if they're a different religion, I don't have an issue with that. But doing extensive studies, one thing that is a belief of mine is that, women and men were created with two completely different roles. I believe that man being created first was created to be the leader. I believe that women, created from the man, they had a completely different role, which I've stated a million times, a role that's a million times more important than the man. To nurture and love and care for and raise another human being. That is the most important job. I've said this all the time. I was a writer in wrestling. I could have done anything to earn a living. I could have went out and gotten a paycheck doing anything. I could have never, ever raised my kids and raised my family the way my wife did. That's the most important job to me. That was the statement I made. Also, I want to be clear about this. When I say the word leader, I don't even believe in that word, because everything about the Bible is we're here to serve. 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 And when I started living my life as a servant, things started becoming much more easier to me. So the light bulb went off in my head. So I'm much more subservient these days than I ever was. It took me a long time to figure that out. I even have tattooed on my arm right here. I don't know if you can read it, but it says live to serve, to remind me every day God was a servant. God washed the feet of his apostles. That's more important than anything else. So again, Ryan threw at me the same thing he threw at you. Yeah, I was discriminated as a kid. I was half Jewish. I was half Mexican. He threw the same thing at me. He went off on this tirade about what his mother did for a living and how he had such a strong mom. And I kept asking over and over and over, where did I degrade women? How does me saying a woman's job is more important than a man's job, how is that degrading? So like in the same sentence, this guy labeled me both a racist and a sexist, of which I am neither one. So I hope people can understand why I got so upset over these comments. And you and I mean, you're bisexual. You're engaged to a woman now, Francesca. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
I'm curious. How did you feel about that podcast that I did? Because I'm sure you and I were probably on completely different pages. Yeah.
I was talking to some people yesterday, and my thought is that, and I had mentioned that in the message, is that people agree to disagree. Do I agree with all of the comments that you made? Not necessarily, but I'm not going to go and bash you for it, because you're entitled to your opinion. That doesn't necessarily make you a bad person.
Francesca, can I stop you there for a minute? As a woman that's in counseling, why do you think people do that? That's what I have a hard time understanding. Like, I can disagree with people's like ideas all day long, and it doesn't affect me. But then you have this other group of people, you know, where if you don't see things their way, you know, all of a sudden you're Satan, you're this, you're that. As a counselor and somebody that's got a master's in that, what's your take on that, Francesca? Like, why are there some people like me and you? Okay, you got your opinion. We may not agree with it. We can have a conversation about it. I'm not going to try to change your mind either way, and we'll come out of it friends, opposed to those that don't like what you say. All of a sudden, it's a firestorm of hatred. What's the difference between those two types of people?
I think, in my opinion, you know, and I think a lot of this has to do with just the shift in society. People are obviously getting more passionate about certain injustices that are happening to people. And I appreciate that. I applaud that. We need more of that. But again, I think it all goes back to hear out the other person, hear out what their thoughts are, come to an understanding of what that person is trying to say before you start making inappropriate, incorrect assumptions about somebody. So that's why we do need to have more in-depth conversations with each other to understand each party, each side, what each side has dealt with, and what we can do to move forward. So unless there's an understanding, unless we come together to have those conversations, there's always going to be people that feel compelled to call you a certain name or label you a certain way without really getting to the crux of that belief.
Yeah. Okay, Francesca, listen, I want to turn the page here, and this is serious, and I am so happy that I'm talking to you because I established earlier, this isn't about my fascination with the boobies. That's going to be my last question to you. This one is very important, Francesca, and I think you are the person for me to talk to. And this is serious, man. I'm dead serious with this. You are a college counselor with a master's. Francesca, my daughter goes to CU. She goes to college, Colorado University. She is what you would call one of those millennials. Okay, she is one of these people out protesting Donald Trump, you know, becoming president, the whole 9 yards. Francesca, this breaks my heart, and I'm really reaching out to you for help. The fact that I am Vince Russo, old school, set in my ways. I really am. I'm very traditional. I take pride in tradition. I take pride in the things my grandmother and grandfather did, and I'm sunken. I'm sunken as a traditional. Okay, we are complete opposites. Let me set one thing straight to everybody out there. Okay, I was not the disciplinarian. Okay, I never really yelled at my daughter. I've never hit my daughter. I always tried to be there as much as I could, with rest. My daughter was born when I was working at the WWE. So, a lot of my time at that point in time was taken away on the road. But I was a good dad. When I was home, I was always with my kids. I wasn't the great disciplinarian, yelling and screaming at my kids. I never did that. I always, I was more of the guy that tried to allow them to figure things out for themselves. I think, life is a lesson in itself, and somebody can talk to you till you're blue in the face until you actually experience life and learn the hard way. You're not going to change. When my daughter went into the 7th grade, she became friends with a very, very, very wealthy girl. And she became a part of that family, and she witnessed like her best friend getting everything she ever wanted. I mean, whatever she wanted. And basically, when me couldn't deliver those same things because I wasn't a millionaire by any stretch of the imagination. Even though my kids always got what they want, I wasn't a millionaire in any stretch of the imagination. She tended to cling to this family a little bit more because this, all the girls in this family were really, really entitled because they were rich and they got whatever they wanted. So my daughter would come home, and there would be times when I'd have to say, no, I can't afford that. I didn't get acres and acres of thousands of acres of land handed down to me. I don't have that kind of money. And she became closer and closer with this family, and the mother and father spoiled her as well. So that started dividing us. Okay. From there, when it was ready for her to go to college, I live 15 minutes from CU. Have you ever been to Colorado University?
I have not.
It's a dream. It's a gorgeous campus. I mean, it's a dream. My daughter wanted to go away to a more expensive school that would have cost me, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. And I basically said, I can't afford that. We have CU 15 minutes away. I will gladly pay for your education. So she didn't get to go to the school of her choice. So every time I said no and she was entitled, the relationship got farther and farther and farther and farther apart. Okay. My daughter now, Francesca, is 21 years old. I'm 55 years old. Because of this entitlement, because of her not getting everything she ever wanted, I am the villain. I am the villain. She has painted a picture of me as the villain, doesn't spend any time at the house, doesn't have any conversations with me. And I mean, I got to tell you, it literally breaks my heart. Now, I know when I worked at TNA and a lot of these young kids were coming in, it was that sense of entitlement, the sense of entitlement. They didn't want to pay their dues. They wanted to become champion next week. They knew more than I was ever going to know. I know it's that generation, the generation of entitlement. Man, I'm asking you for advice here because you're dealing with students on a daily basis, and I'm sure you have to be seeing a lot of what I'm talking about. How do you get through to young adults that just are so entitled and so much smarter to you and know so much more than you're ever going to know, and it's their way or the highway? How do you get through kids at that age?
That's actually a really good question. In my current work, I don't experience that too much because the students that I work with are first generation college students. So they're coming from backgrounds where, their families may have not been privileged, or they are having to pay for college on their own, or relying on other means to help them get through school. So I don't really see that too much now in my work, but when I was still a student, I had to do some internships, and one of the internships I did was at UC Berkeley, and that place, you definitely saw the entitlement there, because the entitlement even came out when I would work with students, because students would have such high expectations of what they're expecting, what they want from you, and when you can't give that to them.
That's it. Yes. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, when they can't give that to them, they make you feel like crap.
That's it. So what do you do? What do I do?
A lot of it is, I think hearing your daughter out, seeing what she feels that she is entitled to. And I think a lot of it just will, I think her views will change over time as she, leaves college, and as she gets older and sees that, anything that may have been given to her or anything that she needs to work for, it's going to come to a reality that she is going to understand that you have to work for things. Things are not just handed to you. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, like you said, that's a generational issue. But as people get older, I think that changes the more responsibility that they have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and you know what,
but
Francesca, I know what you're saying, and like I know it will. I know when she's out there in the real world and it's not easy, she's gonna say, "Holy crap, I know what Dad was talking about." But it's going through this time period now where it's like I can't even have a conversation with her. There's nothing I can say that is going to be a positive.
yeah, and you might not be able to have that conversation because obviously she has her own views on the way things should be, or how things should be done. And when someone has strong views like that, and it kind of goes along the lines of, the whole racist and sexist thing, unless you can see where they're coming from, sometimes it's really hard to ever truly understand what that person is feeling or what they feel like they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, let's get to the important thing. The fascination of the boobie. I revealed yesterday, like, because I don't when I talk about the other end, like I never find that attractive. And I think that stems to when I was a child and I didn't go to the bathroom for 2 days, my mother would stick a tube up my backside and give me a freaking enema. So like I don't look at the derriere in a very appealing way, Francesca, and I think that's why. But I'm a boob man, and I'm not like obsessed by boobs like that. Not that at all. I am attracted to the boob. That's I'm a boob guy. Why is that? Why am I a boob guy? Because you would think, oh, okay, Vince, your mother breastfed you until you were 12, whatever the case may be. Why? But you said you might have some answers into why that is. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna try to the way I was planning to elaborate it I was gonna elaborate in psychology terms, but I definitely
Are you saying you can't do that now because I'm a simpleton?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not.
Well, I am. But anyway, go ahead, Francis.
So where I kind of started, and that was very interesting that you said that, because what instantly came to my mind was, oh, like it sounds like he possibly could be going through this. So there was a psychologist by the name of Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud basically developed the psychodynamic theory. In addition to that, it goes into psychosexual development, and there's different stages of psychosexual development that he said basically kind of what the consequence of that fixation is. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking of that, and I was like, well, let's see if you might relate to some of that. And again, I guess this is, really subjective, of course. But
now let me make one thing clear, Francesca, because I want you to understand this. Like, Francesca, I don't go online and look at boobies. Like I've never done that. I don't know. I honestly, like that, I don't do that. It's not that. It's like when I see an attractive girl, that's where my focus will first go. So I don't want you to think like it's this kind of thing where I'm going online and I'm looking at big breasts. It's not that at all. It's just the first thing I look at in a woman.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the psychosexual stage, with the boobie, there's a stage called the oral stage, and that usually happens from birth until about a year old. And this is when you become really like fixated with the boob. And as I was saying, in prior conversations, this relates to breastfeeding. But, kind of what happens is if you are fixated on the boob or lack thereof, there are things that may occur later on in your life that may relate to that. So
but
I can give you some examples.
Would I have been if that were the case? Like I don't remember, like, as a 12, 13-year-old kid, like being attracted to the boobie. I think it was kind of, once, high school and college and stuff like that. Would that matter, or could it still be from the 6 month to a year gimmick?
No, I think, and again, this is, this is a subjective thing. This is if I was looking at it from this perspective, this is what it could be. But obviously your experience with the boob, like it could be a number of different things that led to that. So this is just one example of what it could possibly be. But there might have been other things that have, that occurred that might explain that. Very much so.
Francesca, can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
I'm curious now because you said, you define yourself as bisexual, right? When I tell you, like, when I look at a woman, like, I'm just drawn to the boobie, like, that's just where I'm drawn. Like, being bisexual, are you drawn to a female body part or a male body part, or is it like a whole? Is it like a different level? Is it like is it all of the mind and the intelligence? Like, I'm just curious because, like, I'm such a gavone and just a simple boob guy. I see an attractive girl, that's where I'm drawn. When you're bisexual, are you drawn to the different body parts of a man and a woman? And listen, I'm asking you because I honestly have no idea. So I'm not meaning to be insulted or anything like that. I'm hoping to learn something.
So, and I can't answer this for every all bisexuals. I'll tell you my experience. For me, yes, I'm attracted to physical aspects specifically. However, I also use that in conjunction with your intelligence.
Right.
Do you stimulate my mind?
Right.
Can you hold a conversation with me? Are you respectful? I carry that with more weight than the physical aspect of a person. I look at it initially. If I see someone attractive, I probably will look at their physical aspect, but then I want to also incorporate the emotional, the interpersonal connection that I have with that person. I don't want to just rely on what I see in front of me.
Yeah, so you got to get inside the head a little bit more, and that kind of determines it for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how long have you been listening to the brand?
Since about June.
Okay, now you could tell if you listen up quite a bit, like, I'm messed up. Like, literally there's something wrong with me. I deal a lot in depression. I'm fighting depression right now. And I got to be honest with you, Francesca, that's part of what pisses me off. Like, my mother just freaking died. I have not had the chance to mourn. And, like, obviously nobody's going to take that into consideration. Nobody's going to give a shit. But I'm trying to deal with this while trying to deal with the loss of my mother. And people, like, just don't get that. And that alone pisses me off. But listening to the shows and listening to how openly I talk about things, especially, my problems, how would you sum me up in a few words? What do I need to do and work on to better myself?
So one of the things I definitely wanted to say is that, and I will admit that I also suffer from depression. I suffer from it. And a lot of my depression stems from when I was in school. I just graduated a few months ago, so I'm still kind of going through the motions. But a lot of what you say and how you feel really resonates with me, because sometimes it's really hard to get up and put on a brave face, and you're on Podcast One, you're on Realm, and you're speaking to hundreds of thousands of people, and when you're dealing with really dark situations and experiences and things that really might affect you, you're having to put on a brave face in front of people. And it's not a bad thing, but it's also, it might be masking how we experience things in our lives. And I'm always a proponent for, discussing depression, discussing issues. I think that's what that's important, because you're not going to understand what someone is going through unless, you know, you hear someone out and see where they're coming from. But yeah, I do feel like part of it is where I think you need to more take care of yourself. And, you know, it's hard to say not letting other people's comments affect you, but, you know, really looking at yourself and reminding yourself that, and at the end of the day, that you're a good person and that you were brought on this earth to bring some good to people, or to other lives, or to this or to that. So reminding yourself how good of a person that you are. And also, you know, taking time out to do the things that you enjoy doing. I know it's hard when you do a podcast 5 days a week, but really taking care of yourself and focusing on your self-esteem, your recovery, your emotional state.
Well, Francesca, you know, as we go forward now, and I'm so glad you came on the show, and I'm so glad we had this discussion. And you know, I do appreciate you speaking up. You know, I mean, I really do. That really, really means a lot to me, because I got to tell you, man, those comments freaking hurt, because they're so opposite of who I am and what I'm about. So I really appreciate people like you stepping up. As we go further, though, and I deal with issues and problems and whatnot, will you come on occasionally, time to time, and counsel me and talk me through maybe some rough moments in my life?
Yeah, of course. And I think the things that I may share with you, and things that might work for you, they may work for me too. So I always say that let's work on finding solutions together. That's the important thing at the end of the day, is that we all need to come together.
Yes.
And fight these injustices that are happening, you know, in the world, in the country, in the lives of everyday people. So instead of arguing with someone, instead of labeling someone, let's see where they're coming from, and let's educate more people to stand up and collaborate together.
Yeah, I'm Francesca. I always say this all the time. We're all in this together. You know, there are countries that hate the United States and literally want to kill us and bomb us. We're all in this together. And again, you know, like I said, one of the things I did was I try to be more of a servant and put other people before myself. But one thing I always try to do is put myself in other people's shoes. Why do they feel that way? Why are they thinking that way? Let me try to understand. And I think that's great advice. Francesca, I thank you so much for coming on here today and enlightening us. And I hope to bring you on in the near future, and we could talk some more.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to add that this coming on today, this was not meant for me to bash this individual. I think it's more or less just building awareness on, you know, the things that are said, and just, you know, again, you know, bringing people together to end some of the injustices that are happening.
And I agree with you 100%. I do not want to bash. I just want to, I just, like I said, I am very, very offended by some serious allegations. And I just have to let my heart be known. It's not intended to bury anybody else. But Francesca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And you are a great person. And I appreciate you always taking the time to message and write me back. And that means a lot to me as a fan. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Francesca, everybody. And I hope that enlightens you. And like I said, man, these are the type of things on this show I really think we need to talk about. And listen, man, if you're a wrestling guy, and if this show isn't wrestling 24/7 and you don't want to listen to it, like, that's cool, man. That's your prerogative. But, a case like this that can bring people closer together, that can make us have a better understanding of each other and love one another, I think is more important. And that's why I'm glad we talked about that today.